new documentary called The Armor of Light follows evangelical minister Rob Schenck, a man far right on the political spectrum, as he begins to ask himself the question, can he be both pro-life and pro-gun? The film was the directorial debut of Abigail Disney and grandniece of Walt, and I talked to her about it. But first, a short clip from the film, the moment when Schenck sits down with Lucy McBath. McBath's son, Jordan Davis, was shot and killed in what became a national story because of his shooter's stand-your-ground defense.
We're deceived into believing that we are so powerful because we have something that will protect me. Instead of looking to God righteously as the protector, we have replaced God with our guns as the protector.
Wow. That's a very bold and courageous thing to say.
So, Abigail, the question film asks is quite simple. Can it be pro-life and pro-gun? And the Reverend we just saw struggles to get to the answer, which is no. Talk about that journey. Where did he come from to get to the place he ended up?
Yeah, well, the place he started at was he wasn't really thinking about it. You know,
he was a pro-life activist.
He was a pro-life activist. It was fixture on the far right, and you know, everything came in a package. You took everything from the menu or nothing. You know, so he didn't think about it. And, you know, really, honestly, I asked him the question. That's how he got started on this. I asked him, was it possible? And he said to me that first day, oh, thanks a lot. And then 5 weeks later, when he decided to work with me, he said, I've been trying to find a way that you're wrong, and I can't.
And essentially what happens is he experiences many gun deaths in and around him, including a doctor in the same town where he's leading all these demonstrations, whose wife blames him, the Reverend, for the killing, the Navy killings. He's involved with the Amish things, counseling the family. So it's essentially all this gun death around him that begins to move him, right?
Right, and it's gun death around all of us, right? He's only experiencing what we're all experiencing, is this accumulation of hideous moments.
But he wasn't willing to go the last yard. He was anxious about it until he meets a pro-choice woman who suffered the worst thing a parent can, who we just saw a minute ago, Lucy McBath. Jordan Davis, virtually no one heard of her son. Everybody's heard of her son's killer. Jordan was a young African-American kid, teenager, music allegedly too loud in his SUV, and Michael Dunn, who's since been convicted of murder, fires into the thing and kills her kid, right?
Yeah, empties his gun out into a retreating vehicle.
And she becomes an anti-gun activist.
Right, exactly. Because what else are you going to do, right?
And so how does she convince the Reverend? What does she do that gets him to cross that line to say, I'm ready? She
just, you know, all she does is she brings him back to what Jesus said. I mean, it's the heart of everything for him. And he just can't turn his face away when she says to him, you have to, don't you want to die knowing you did everything you could?
I want to tell you my two favorite scenes in your movie. I hope you're okay, because my favorite scene is when he finally decides to go public. You can see him taking a deep breath, and he goes to speak about this in Isla Vista. Is that where he is?
Isla Vista.
And how many people are in the audience listening to him on the street?
One crazy dude.
One person he is talking to, as if he's talking to thousands. But that's powerful. The most powerful scenes are the scenes where he earnestly is trying to convince his fellow evangelical ministers that being pro-life is not compatible with being pro-gun. Let's see a piece of this.
For me, this is not a question of the politics, but the theology, the ethical, the moral. That's the sphere we all deal with.
It's in our DNA. It's part of our freedom. It's part of what our founding fathers established.
There's evil in the heart of man. And that's why we need a Savior to come and change our hearts so that we can respond to one another in love and we can resolve conflicts and we don't have to turn to violence. If we take guns away, people are just going to kill people with something else.
So what we need is Jesus and the gospel and a sidearm, right?
So did he ever convince any of these people? These are really tough nuts to crack here. I don't mean that in a pun way, but they're really tough subjects.
They're tough nuts and they don't want to move, but you'd be surprised at what quietly happened around the edges that people weren't willing to show us on camera, but there were a lot of people who came forward. One pastor said to him, I feel like you're speaking my secret language. So there is movement happening. You don't see a lot of it in the film, but you can definitely feel it as we take this film out.
So I only met you today, but I'm guessing, and you'll tell me if I'm wrong, you have two goals. Your first goal is to continue to make great films that crack people's minds open, right, so far?
Yes.
Your other goal is to complete one whole interview without being asked about your last name. Is that your other goal?
It would be nice.
This is not that interview. Okay, so your great uncle is Walt Disney.
Yes.
Your father he's understood, but huge. Roy, Walt's brother, is your grandfather.
Well, grandfather.
Grandfather,
Yeah.
my apologies, who obviously was huge in the growth of Disney.
Yeah.
Curse or blessing growing up as a Disney kid?
Blessing.
Why?
Blessing. I got to see things and meet people that, other people don't get, and I got to go backstage and see Mickey with his head on a table next to him, and I got to see all kinds of amazing stuff.
So what were
and
those
my
perks
grandfather
like?
was amazing.
Were you as much a fan as we all were?
Yeah, I was. Although when I was a kid, they weren't re-releasing films, so you didn't really actually see, Snow White or whatever. It was all in the vault. Remember the vault?
No, yes.
But the nuns at my school would ask my dad to bring a movie in for the last day of school, and so he would bring a 60mm print in of That Darn Cat or something like
Were you
that.
proud or embarrassed?
That was embarrassing. That was horrible.
So I think we all have learned, not at the time, we've all learned that, let's put it politely, your family has a pretty conservative bent.
Super.
You were not of that political school. You're a 180. What was that like growing up, and what was your evolution?
Well, I mean, growing up, it wasn't really an issue, except
you're a kid, right?
Yeah, exactly, right. You think your parents know everything, and then you go off to college and you think your parents know nothing, and you go the opposite way, and then eventually you find your way to who you really are. That was really hard. But the fight I had with my mother was, you taught me these values as a conservative, and I actually do what I do because of the values you taught me, not in spite of them. And so I kept trying to kind of get her head wrapped around, like, the only difference between us really is that I have a different sense of how to make those values live in the world. It was hard, but it gave me the capacity to speak to conservatives. That's why I was able to connect to Rob in the film.
Last thing is, one of my radio producers came up with the most important question of the day. Did what happened in Bambi help shape your view on guns?
Maybe not my view on guns.
But the views of millions of others.
Yes, a lot of people.
Your film is terrific, by the way. It's really powerful. Abigail, it's a pleasure to meet you. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.